Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's
Hi.
Councilman Steve Blair, and we're going to get started. We're missing one member, but he'll join us on the phone here in a minute. He's having computer issues. So the first thing I'll do is have Carrie do roll call for us, please.
Councilman Blair?
Here.
Jane Orr?
Here.
Mark Van Warmer has stepped away from the group. Millie Owen?
Here.
Sherry Hanna?
Here.
Jim Hazelbaker? It's not quite on yet. Mark Natepsky?
Here.
Sandy Griffiths?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Okay, thank you everybody for being here, and I think Carrie probably has sent minutes to you all. Would that be a correct statement, everybody?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I would ask for approval of minutes just to stay silent, and if somebody has an objection, go ahead and speak now. And I'll consider the minutes approved of the July 14th, 2020 meeting. We'll move right on into item D, which is draft sewer policy discussion, and I'll turn that over to Craig.
Okay, we're going to start off with our policy discussion again.
Share screen.
Okay, we'll get the screen shared. So we'll start off again back where what we discussed last meeting in regards to ultimately the mission of this commission, mission of the commission. That is to complete a comprehensive policy and implementation of a sewer service expansion program. And as we discussed previously in the presentations last time, then the number one goal is identifying the what and the why. And that's about improving the watershed quality due to that we currently have 12 impaired waterways within our community, and there are more being reviewed currently by ADEQ. Next item under goal number one there, increase recharge. And by increasing recharge, we're also reducing the one-time water use. When we have water that is sold and goes to septic systems, then essentially it is a one-time use, and we do not get it back to have the opportunity to recharge that water. And then provide improved services to our residents by providing quality sewer service within these septic areas. Then that has the ability to improve the property values that are brought onto that sewer system, and in turn also by improving the water quality, then that opens up additional opportunities in regards to our waterways and our lakes and reservoirs. Okay. So then from there, then we're moving into goal number two as far as creating the policy. So in order to kind of initially start with creating that policy, creating the framework for it, that's where we created the questionnaire that was sent out to all of you. And thank you very much for responding on those. And we're going to move into going through some of those questions so that we can have additional discussion and consideration to go with those questions and the responses that we got back from you. Let's scroll down to that. The goal number three will be at the tail end of today's discussion after we go through and work on these questions. And ultimately, these questions then will help us to frame the policy statements and or the wants, the requirements, and that of a policy. So the first one in there, so in order to not have so many of these to go over, we've included or combined their inside and outside of city limits. So with our first question, should new home connect to existing sewer? When the home is built, if the sewer main is adjacent or abutting to the property. And we had overwhelming response on that for inside and outside of city limits as yes from all of you. So being that we have that set there, an overwhelming response, if we don't have compelling discussion of that towards that from anyone, we would go on to the next one. And okay, Carrie, will we be able to?
Greg, John Palladini. Greg.
Can you repeat your name again?
John Palladini.
Yes, sir.
So just be cautious when we're discussing policy. The outside city limits, there's an enforcement issue. Only, we can enforce it if the property or if the home is connected to city sewer or city water. Sorry, so we can mandate that it also connects to city sewer. But if it's not connected to city water, there's really no way to impose that requirement on an outside of the city limits. We don't have any jurisdiction. So when we're talking about policy, we just have to be careful on that out.
Okay, thank you with that, John. And yeah, this first question would be associated with a new home build, and they would be requesting to get water service. So then that's where we would be considering that they would also have to be connected to sewer in order to be considered for that water service.
Okay.
Okay, John? John, is that okay then?
Yeah.
Okay.
May I go ahead?
Go ahead, Millie.
Okay. On Williamson Valley Road, the people out there have wells and septic. And I imagine the cost is exorbitant to put in. Am I correct on that?
Millie, we're getting a lot of feedback from your speakers.
Okay. Is this any better?
That is better, thank you.
Okay. Out on Williamson Valley Road, we have friends that have a well that had to be built and a septic system and leach field. How that expense has to be extremely high to install all of that. How would they respond in kind to being told at time of incorporation into the city that they need to transfer?
There has been no discussion about that whatsoever. Right now, our simple question at hand is that if there's a new house that is being considered to be built and they are requesting to connect to city water, then do we also want to say that they have to connect to city sewer in order to get that water connection?
Yes.
When available.
Yes. Millie, your question is quite a ways off from this, and there will be a point in time where we will discuss some of those things. There's no discussion about forcing anyone to give up wells and septic systems to that point.
Okay.
Go ahead, number two.
Okay, so then number two, again, we're talking about a new home construction. They would be requesting to get water service from the city, and we're asking, would they be required to extend a sewer main a reasonable distance if the property is not adjacent to or butting a sewer main? On this question, we had 5 yes and 1 no in city limits, and 3 yes and 1 no in the county. So we have a majority of yes wanting to consider that, yes, they would have to connect onto sewer to get the water service. So then the second part of that question then, we need to discuss the options for a maximum distance to be considered for this requirement. One way as staff that we have looked at it to consider would be a distance that would be something similar to the cost that it would cost a resident in order to install a septic system. So for instance, if sewer was being installed within a paved street and had to be extended in the realm of when we look at, where is that feedback coming from?
I can't find anybody that is.
It might be whoever's.
But somebody muted that nobody else is.
We're getting some awful feedback at the moment. We're trying to figure out where it was coming from.
If nobody else is allowed. I've had it. Yeah, they're all muted because they're all lined through.
Okay. So in considering a sewer main line extension within a paved street, a general rule of thumb that you can see for cost could be in the realm of $100 a foot. So with that in mind, if the requirement is potentially 100 feet, then we'd be looking at $10,000 for construction costs associated with extending the sewer main like that. Then there would also be the impact fees and a service cost. So then you can be in the realm of $15,000 to $20,000, which would equal the cost of installing a septic system. Are there thoughts or consideration to a concept like that?
Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
We're still.
Oh, you got one muted over there.
Millie unmuted. So
Hey, Millie?
Yes.
Go ahead. Your hand's up.
Alrighty. So what happens, I'm on a corner lot. So am I looking at 200 feet?
No, to our example, we just talked about that, okay, if your lot was vacant and you were going to build a new house, potentially if the sewer was within 90 feet, then as part of the policy, in order to get water service for that new house, and sewer was 90 feet away, then that would be a requirement to get water, would be to extend that sewer that 90 feet and create the hookup to your proposed house.
So the $15,000 to $20,000 with the hookup and installation and fees, the impact, I wouldn't be charged twice for a corner lot.
No.
No, it'd be just for one structure, Millie.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be just that one fee, that one charge. Mark, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, Councilman. Can you hear me now?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think it's a very reasonable approach when it comes to an initial discussion of costs and obligations for extending a main. circumstances can vary. Obviously, soil conditions can increase costs, as we know. So, but I think it's a good start.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to the next one.
We have a couple
Oh,
hands up.
Hello?
go ahead, Jane.
Well, I just wonder, maybe this is too early or whatever, but how many lots are we talking about that are open to new houses? Is it mostly houses that are already in existence that we're talking about bringing sewer to, or are there a lot of, places where new homes could be built?
At the moment, everything we're talking about is a new build consideration.
Well, I understand that. I'm asking how many of those compared to existing homes are we, as a percentage, are we talking about bringing sewer to? Are there a lot of empty lots to these areas that we're thinking of bringing sewer to?
We don't have that number of empty lots. When we get to the question about existing customers, we have those numbers.
Okay. Well, I guess our problem right now is, yes, we want new houses to hook up if it's available. I think, isn't that already the case with the city?
It's not the current policy.
Yes, it's not currently the policy.
Oh, okay. So we would be deciding that as a commission?
We'd be recommending that as a group to the full city council.
Okay, I got you now. So we're not only talking about bringing city sewer to existing homes in the North Prescott area, we are also talking about a policy of forcing, or what we call it, new homes to join the city sewer if it's.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, we're talking about a comprehensive policy looking at sewer connections as a whole,
Gotcha.
not just the unsewered current water users.
Okay, that clarifies things for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. You have something? Sandy, you're on.
Thank you. I am having conflicted thoughts over this. If I want to hook up to city water, then you're telling me I have to be mandated to connect to sewer. And I don't feel that's right, that we're taking charge and enforcing homeowners to do something that may not be applicable. It could be cost preventative. Hooking up to sewer does not really, I don't think there are any comparisons found where it increases the value. I'd like to know that. But I want us to be careful that we're not being big brother and taking over folks' lives with water and sewer connections.
Sandy, I'll respond from my standpoint, and Craig can jump in. If, in fact, somebody wants to build a house, we're not going to take away their opportunity to have a septic tank if they don't reach the threshold of it being equal of cost to hook up to the sewer. If it's less or equal to, then they have to hook up to the sewer. That's the only way we're ever going to make headway in this community on taking septic systems out of the picture. Now, if it happens to be a septic system is, say, $15,000 and the hookup would be $30,000, then of course they would use a septic system.
Well, or when we get to discussions about policy on
Main lines.
on financing, we're as a group, we're all going to talk about financing items too at the next meeting, and at the end of this meeting a little bit, we're all going to talk about financing options, so that can be part of the policy and or part of the recommendation to council as well, because ultimately the program is about protecting our community and our city, and to continue adding septic systems, to continue with impaired waterways, that doesn't accomplish protecting our community or our city.
I think a lot of the laws we have in place now, Sandy, could be considered as Big Brother as we speak, because you always have to have some sort of rules and regulations to follow. Remember that in North Prescott, as an example, if somebody wants to build on a lot, or let's say just say outside the city limits of Prescott, somebody wants to build on a lot and they're asking for water, certainly they have to be able to have some kind of conversation about giving back what they're using in their house as far as sewage if they reach the parameters that we're talking about here in installing septic systems.
And I agree with both of your comments. I agree that we need to protect our watershed, definitely. But I want us to tread lightly on this so that we don't seem like we're mandating and we can enforce in a good way. I know we'll get to the financial stuff. I have big concerns over that. So now we're going to turn into CPAs and financial accountants, and we're looking at all these invoices to see what system costs less or costs more. We certainly cannot get into that beehive.
Well, I think that the whole purpose of this committee is to look at these things, but ultimately this isn't the final discussion place. It's going to be in front of council and probably planning and zoning at some point so that there's more public input. I think, but we have to have some place to start, and I think if the fair trade-off is what Craig suggested, the cost of a septic mirrors the cost of extending the main line, is where we first start.
And keep in mind, there are so many different septic systems out there. We have to tread carefully. I'm all for this. I'm honored to be on this committee. And I can see that it's going to take some time to do it right and get all of our ducks in a row. And I'm grateful to be able to help do that.
Okay, we're going to go to John Palladini. John, go ahead.
Yeah, Councilor Blair, I just want to caution you. You made a statement that was sort of conclusive, and I think the purpose of this commission is to flesh these things out. In other words, there may be a decision by the commission or by the council that says, you know what, sewering Prescott is so important that we're going to mandate it up to 2 times the cost of a septic system. So I would just sort of remind you to be careful that the purpose of this commission is to talk about these things and not really, and to flesh it out and see if there's a consensus, but not making any sort of conclusions at this point. I mean, sort of like what Craig said, if it's a policy decision that if sewering is so important to the city, that there may be an ultimate decision that we're going to look at 2 times the cost, and that's going to be mandated if you want to build a house in the city or hook up the water outside the city. I mean, so that's just for the whole commission to think about these things. It's the whole idea is to talk about it and find out where where there's a consensus for mandating sewer.
Okay. I stand corrected then. Who do you want to go to now? Jim Hazelbaker. Hello, Jim.
You have to unmute.
Jim, you have to unmute. Hello, Jim. He's still muted. All right, let's go to Jane.
Hold on. How about now?
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. A thought just crossed my mind when we were talking about this, putting the sewer in up to an abutting property inside the city and outside the city, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Right.
When 30 years ago, I had gas. They had gas run on oh shoot, Rosser, or not Rosser, but Campbell Street. And I decided that there was several of us down here decided we'd like to have gas. They came in and ran the gas line down to the property right across the street. They didn't charge us for it. It was the homeowner's responsibility to run from the house to the street, however you wanted to do it. If you wanted to dig the line, that's fine. If you wanted to have somebody come in and dig the trench to put the line in, that was fine. I volunteered both. I volunteered both of them. I'm sorry, go on.
I said ultimately, we haven't got to the point to look at the financials and what the city would do or what they wouldn't do. But your point's well taken, because it could very well go that way. And we look at financing a project. It may be that the city run the main line, and then the people that are associated across from it hook up at their cost.
Okay. I'm sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
What I was getting at, if you're going to run the water line, they generally, if I'm not mistaken, they run the water line and the sewer line at the same time in these additions, do they not?
Within new subdivisions, yes, they do.
Okay.
But your description, what you talked about there, absolutely, that will be one of the options that we'll talk about when we're looking at financing options, again, as then recommendations from this commission towards council to consider. And there are many alternatives, so.
Well,
and we'll discuss that when we're talking about financing.
When I think about it, all I hear about is how valuable water is and how valuable recharge is for the city and the county. If we're going to do this, we need to. That's one thing that needs to be taken into consideration. If you've got 3,000 gallons a month in a normal home, or 4,500, depending upon how many children you have, the recharge of that water that we're losing to a septic needs to be taken into consideration for that. Now, that's just my one man's opinion.
Yep,
and I'll shut up now.
No problem at all. Very good points. And yes, that absolutely will be what we're talking about when we're talking about financing. So again, keep those points for that discussion.
You betcha. Will do.
Go ahead, Millie.
Okay, so people who have currently the septic system will be grandfathered in, and so they're not forced to hook up to the sewer system?
That'll be part of a different question when we get to it.
All right. Off of Green Lane, it changes names heading west, and the Greek Orthodox Church sold that property that they were going to build a new home on, or a new church. So that'll be a new build property for homeowners, and they're in the city. So in our subdivision, Prescott North, we had 3 homes built within the last decade. All have new septic and leach fields attached, and there are other lots in Prescott North to be built on yet. So brand new septic systems versus mandatory hookups? Can you?
That again will be part of questions as we continue going forward.
Okay, because I just was thinking before that new subdivision goes in off of the far west side of Green Lane, that's a pretty big parcel of land.
Yep, and I believe it's for sale now, so, time will tell where that goes.
All right, because that lot, the sign is gone, that's for sale. So I assume some builder has already claimed it.
Okay. Yep, we'll continue with the questions and the information we received back. So the next thing on here, right below number 2, we had the star. Would there be a hardship? Be any hardship the city would consider that would exempt a home from connecting, to sewer when it is not adjacent and abutting the sewer main. And we had a 3-3 tie on inside the city with that, and 3 yes, 1 no on outside, on responses returned on that. And definitely hardships, I believe, will be part of more of our discussion when we get to the financing aspect of it, financing options, what would be considered there. And there are some very valid hardships that we will need to consider as a group.
And I would agree with everybody listening with Sandy's comments about walking lightly, because when you look at everything, it can't be all one cookie box. All these places we're talking about have different constraints, different landforms, different things that are going to come into the conversation, but we need to have a general policy and understanding that we can veer off that policy if need to be. Go ahead, Craig.
Okay. So and then our last question here associated with new build houses, then should a septic system be allowed if the cost of the system was less than connecting to city sewer, excluding development impact fees? We're inside city, we got 4 yes, 3 no. And outside city, we got 3 yes, 2 no. So kind of consensus is there that septic should be considered if they're cheaper than hooking to city sewer. And then I believe that this also would be part of our discussions then on recommendations for financing. So to some of the comments that you have all expressed today, we have the potential that if it is less, then there's the potential then where maybe the city and or other sources of funding helps to cover those costs in order to incentivize the connection to sewer to reduce the number of septics for all the reasons that we have discussed.
And remember, those reasons that we're here in the first place is that we've heard from our consultants how important it is to take septics off and try to do something different like a regular sewer system, because number one, the water that we generate on reclaim, but also the amount of water that we're losing to the tributaries through the sewer systems that are polluting our reservoirs. That is a huge deal, and is going to continue to be more so in the future with ADEQ and these folks down in Phoenix. We both know, all of us know, that those waters have been considered as impaired, and one way to get away from it is to have the city take a big chunk, whichever that might be, when the council decides to run the main lines in given areas, and then we have a policy of how the homeowners hook up to it and what that cost might look like. So, I mean, this picture is going to be bigger than just going over a survey. It's going to be a lot of different moving parts. So, do we want to go to Millie real quick? Yes, Millie. Oops.
Oh, okay. On the use of the sewer, how much does the city charge for per gallon of water used that enters the sewer? I know in the past that is calculated in the water bill, so it varies depending on usage of gallons of water.
It does vary on the usage, and what the city does is utilizes a calculation for 6 months during the winter time frame. So then, as much as possible, the irrigation usage is excluded from that use. So utility billing takes meter reads over those 6 months in the winter, and then it is calculated and created an average water use during that time frame to set the next year's worth of sewer charges. What the charge per gallon is, I can't recite that at the moment. It's been too long since I looked at that. And then as we go along, there also will be the consideration that there's the initial cost for septic systems, and that's not the only cost. Then there are costs for, especially if they're maintained correctly, with pumping, cleaning of them, as well as then long-term, as far as when there's failures associated with them. And there seems to be a kind of a misnomer that the septic systems are just, they're working fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Just because when we flip that magic lever on that toilet and everything disappears, doesn't mean that the septic system per se is working correctly. And that is directly becoming evident through the impaired waterways and everything that's coming out of the sampling of our waterways. So we'll
All
go
right,
on.
but right now, all of us that are on septic systems do not pay an additional $50, $100 a month for sewer. Is that correct for water usage? I
That's
have no
correct.
idea. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have a monthly fee because you're on the septic system. You just have the ghost waiting to get you someplace down the road when the system does fail and has to be replaced.
Okay, let's go to Sandy. Go ahead, Sandy.
Thank you. I would like to just, if you don't mind, backtrack a second to the goals sheet, number 2, create policy. If we could have staff add another bullet point under there, because I just thought about this listening to all this conversation. I don't want us to forget under policy that we really need to create some sort of compliance alternative or appeals section to this draft policy that we're working on. I don't want that to go missed because that's an important component of our mission and our policy.
Yeah, it needs to be there. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be like the hardship exemption, but we'll make note of that as well, Sandy.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, Mark.
Thank you. You know, I appreciate everything I'm hearing. My comment is, you know, we have an elephant in front of us and we're trying to figure out how we're going to eat it, and it's one bite at a time. But I think if we try to begin with the end in mind, in an ideal world, if money were no object, what would we desire as the best outcome when it comes to, you know, improving our watershed quality, obtaining more treated effluent for recharge and reuse? You know, if we can approach it in that framework or from that point of view, then we can, I think, work through the other details of that become more contentious when it comes to how are we going to pay for this? Because everybody seems to be going back to how we're going to pay for that, and that's a different discussion. I really think that we need to focus on what ideally would we want to do most optimally to ensure that we're advancing the city's interest with respect to protecting the assets that we have in those lakes and our streams. You know, we have become a recreation destination. People come here to enjoy the amenities, and those things are assets to the city, and they are important. They need to be preserved. And so ideally, what can we do to achieve that goal? And so that's the kind of framework that I have in mind as I participate in this.
That's a great comment, Mark. You're absolutely correct, because then the city needs to, as a whole, the council needs to look at what we're going to do in the future is taking these small bites of this elephant and taking these zones and putting money in every year's budget for construction and for engineering, and we need to move it forward and not just keep talking about it. So your comments are well taken. The financing part will come. The end goal is to do exactly what you just stated, and I won't go over it again. I think everybody heard it. I think everybody feels the same way. It's a quality of life issue, number one, in your house, for your own sanitary conditions, and for public sector using our lakes and reservoirs. Let's go to Hazel Baker on line 1. Jim. Hey, Jim, you're on.
Jim, you have to unmute yourself again.
I just
There
have
you
a
go,
quick.
Jim.
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Do you have a general idea? Because there seems to be a lot of discussion what this is going to cost. Do you have an average idea of what a family of 2 or a family of 4 pays for sewage treatment each month?
Not at this
Just
moment, but
just a general idea. Is it $40 a month? Is it $60 a month for sewage? Is it $10 a month?
no, we cannot recite a number for it at this moment, but we definitely can have that for the next meeting.
That would be I think that would set a lot of people's mind at ease. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And thank you, Mark. Excellent point. Excellent way of looking at it. And I think that helps us go into the next section where now we're talking about existing homes. So, should an existing home be required to connect to sewer if an existing sewer main is adjacent or abutting the property? So we do have homes out there like this that exist. They're on city water. There is a city sewer main abutting or adjacent to the property, and they are still on septics today. So then, to Mark's point on where we're trying to get to with the program, that's what comes into play, definitely considering this scenario. So initially, we got responses of 2 yes and 4 no in the city, and 3 yes, 3 no in the county. So to that concept, that's where we need to consider again what we're trying to achieve with the program. And ultimately, the program is to improve the watershed's quality as well as reduce that one-time water use, increase the return water towards this question.
We have Mark Woodfill on there that wants to make a comment. He's our budget director, everybody. Mark, you there?
Yeah, Councilman, I'm here. I just
Go ahead.
I just wanted to answer the question that was brought up. The fee for wastewater treatment has a base fee of $21.47 a month, plus for residential $6.21 per 1,000 gallons. In my case, I have about 2 people living in my house. It's about $42 a month.
Okay, Jim, you're muted, Jim, but I'm sure you heard that. $42 a month. Okay, thank you, Mark.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and move to what your comments were.
Oh, wait a minute, sir. I have my hand up for
Okay,
Mr. Wood.
I didn't see it.
Okay, on Mark Woodfield, how many gallons or what is your usage? Because you're a party of 2 individuals at your home, you said?
Yes.
I have a $72.51 water bill without the $21.47 and $6.21 per 1,000 gallons. So at the I guess what I'm asking is, how many gallons did you use last month?
All right. Let me bring my bill up again. Sorry, I closed it. My winter, I use about 3,400 gallons a month. Yeah, that's close to our class average for residential, Councilman.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're kind of at a tie and or to a higher percentage no on existing homes being connected to sewer if it's available, abutting and or adjacent to the property.
So the question I would have is that there's always got to be some sort of incentive. And I think at some point we have to determine what that cost would cost those people that exist to have them hooked to the sewer and make it available to where they want to hook up. So we need to look at, if you are, somebody out there listening and you have one of those lines in front of you, at what point do they have to hook up to that sewer? Is it when the house sells?
And we have
Okay.
we have all those
Okay.
options in there. Maybe we try to, if we have some individuals that maybe voted no on here or answered no, if they have compelling reasons or questions that towards this, maybe we talk about that a little bit, or maybe to the aspect and excellent points that Mark put out in regards to, we have to think about our end goal without costs included right now on what the policy is trying to set in place in regards to the expansion of sewer service or the additional connections. Then as a group, can we consider that we would say yes towards connecting existing houses to a sewer pipe if it's adjacent or abutting a property currently, and then we would move on to the parameters that we would set into place that would go with that yes connection.
Well, personally, as far as the councilman and working on this for years, it should be unanimous yes by everybody sitting there on the board, just in my opinion, because if we're going to ever reach our ultimate goal, it's got to be a yes. It can't be a maybe or a no. And I think however we get to that yes, if you're a homeowner and you're on septic and you have city water, what makes everybody feel warm and fuzzy? Generally speaking, it's the cost of hooking up. So at that point in time, we have to figure in the financial part of it, what is the city going to do to take these septics out of service, and what is our financial obligation as a city to make that happen? And you have a bunch of them down here. So if somebody's got some feedback on this, the folks that voted no, I would like to know what your comments are.
Right now, we don't have any hands up, so maybe we don't have anybody that's really chomping at the bit to give us a different perspective.
Okay.
So maybe we're doing all right as far as leaning towards saying yes, and then we will go on to consideration of the individual parameters that would outline
Let's do
the
that.
yes.
Yep, go ahead.
So then within 1 year of adoption, we didn't get a lot of responses back on these. We have a 2-to-1 no with the 1 year. And maybe we look at these and choose the couple that are, it seems like should be very easily answered yes. For instance, number two and or where's the last one? No, not the last one. Why don't we have septic failed?
Oh, that's, what if it said no? You don't have it up there, but it should be up there.
That should be on there.
We
So
just missed it on the list, but it should say when a septic system fails. That was the overwhelming one where people said this should happen.
Okay. All right, so if we said that we were going to have existing houses connect to that existing sewer when a septic system fails, if anybody has any issues with that, raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll say yes on that one. Then if we go to the second and the third, the second one would be another opportunity to do it when it would also not create potentially, a hardship or a cost for someone living in that house. Upon sale of the property or property ownership change, then that could be part of that transaction and not create an expense for someone, like today. Sandy's got her hand up.
Go ahead, Sandy, you're on. Hello, Sandy.
Sandy, you'll have to unmute.
Sandy, you have to unmute.
I got it. I couldn't hardly get to it.
What are you doing, exercises?
Yes. Okay. So when a property sold and ownership of the property is transferred, I disagree with that. What if this were a house, let's say that's 3 years old and it has a septic system in it? The owner died, the owner got transferred, who knows what. I think that's very unfair that they would be required to hook up to sewer when they, in almost all cases, that septic system is still very viable and functional.
Well, again, it takes us a one backward step of achieving the goal of taking these houses off of a septic. So, I mean, I understand the warm and fuzzy comments that you're making on that, but again, the ultimate goal of us sitting here talking is to remove septic systems, and the righteous way to do that would have different parameters that we're looking at of how we get there without being out there, like John Palladini said, where other communities have mandated it throughout the community based upon EPA and Arizona water quality. So I guess you just, Sandy, have to draw the line of whether you feel warm and fuzzy or you don't think it's fair or unfair. But in transferring property when there are when a sewer system is available, that is a prime time, in my opinion, to be able to relinquish one of those septic systems.
I understand what you're saying. I'm a firm believer that with this policy, the end goal, yes, is the watershed and the quality of water and what we're trying to do. However, we cannot be the city of Prescott, Tasmanian devil, and with these strict enforcements, we still need to have along the way some sort of warm and fuzzy where we understand what's going on and we get the plight of our homeowners and our taxpayers.
Okay. Thank you, Sandy. Let's go to Millie. Hello, Millie. Unmute, Millie.
Got it. Okay. According to Mark Woodfield, we would in Prescott North be looking between $55 to $60 additional to our water bill monthly for usage, depending on how many people are in our home. And that's a rough estimate. Just so people know out there, my $70 or $75 bill is going to jump up to $130 to $140 a month currently.
Okay.
Now, Mark did state that it's $42 average a month for his two-person home.
Yeah.
Right,
As an
but
example.
okay, and I'm a two-person home. It's rather large, and we're using $54.50 this past month gallons.
Per month when you have exterior watering.
Yeah, mine is too.
Right. So that the summer months are not calculated in the sewer average billing.
You would have
Okay.
to take your 6-month winter bills, Millie, and then average those out to get to your exact amount in your home.
Right, but I'm just looking at expense, and
Okay.
I just want to make sure that the lift stations and the pumps are taken into consideration for Prescott North.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks, Millie. And I think, and I appreciate you bringing up Prescott North, because that's been under scrutiny for a long time, and there was a lot of dialogue, and hopefully we'll get further than we got last time. Okay, go ahead, Mr. in charge.
Okay, and next one then, to consider requiring the connection when sewer usage is increased, associated with like a building addition or a change that would increase the sewer usage or the water usage at the residence. When houses are built, all the septic systems are designed and engineered for the size of that house. So then that is something that definitely has gone on. For instance, in the Mountain Club area, they were all minimal used cabins, and now the majority of them are full-time residents and large houses, and that's why there's so much wonderful groundwater in the Mountain Club area. So
I think that's a very good one. Jane, go ahead, Jane, unmute.
Okay, could I ask that we expedite the meeting by just going over how the answers were voted on? We've already talked about these things. We've already answered our questions as to how we would like it done. I think as a meeting, we should just be going over how the voting went at this point and keep the discussion for itemized things for later meetings. Is that something that I could ask? Because we are getting kind of bogged down in answers that we've already given on this questionnaire.
I think I would agree with you, Jane, but everybody else that's on there listening don't know what the collective answers are from everyone. And
well,
we're trying,
okay.
we're trying to
I thought that's what
eliminate.
you were doing. I thought you were giving us a score, so to speak. Is that not?
Well, and that's what, right. And what we're trying to do is take some of those that people don't agree with off the list.
Okay.
And if we don't go through them collectively, then staff won't know how to proceed with what they want to give to council in the future.
Okay, but I guess I don't understand why we voted then. Why did we fill out the questionnaire?
So they'd have time to think about it.
Go ahead.
that way everyone had some time to think about that, and definitely then when we got the answers back, it was clear that there was so much more thinking involved in the answers, all about what it was going to cost, what it would cost to do everything in there, and we're going to be discussing costs later and opportunities for incentives towards reducing the costs and opportunities, whether it's grants, bonds, loans, everything in order to build it. So we were seeing by a number of the answers that we were off track or not considering what the mission and the goals is of the commission.
Okay. Okay, so I guess I misunderstood what you were doing this morning. I thought you were reading the scoring of the questionnaire. And so I'm
I think
off
that's
track.
all right. Part of that, that's a fair question, Jane, and part of it is not to drag this out any further, because I'm sure everybody has things they want to do. I think it has more to do with dialogue from different mindsets, like from Sandy or Martin Natufsky or Hazel Baker, whoever it might be, is to give us something that we as a staff haven't thought about or something that we need to get away from and not consider.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, thank you.
And then, you know, towards kind of your question then, Jane, so as we look at the other options that we had in the list here, for instance, the first one, within 1 year of adoption. I think what I've gauged by all the conversation questions is that potentially to say, just to put it out there, that within 1 year of adoption of the policy, that anybody that fronts a sewer main that's not connected now would have to connect. I think I would consider that that's arbitrary and too heavy-handed by us at a group at this point.
I would agree with that, and I'd also have to say that it all is going to hinge on that big number that we talked about, is what the financial obligation is going to be of those folks that front that sewer line. If the city is going to pay for the main line and then maybe step up and pay for half of the installation from house to main line, it may make it palatable for people to say, let's do this. But until we get to the financial part, some of these things I think are probably bad ideas. Because the city needs to step up and have a financial, I guess, draw on this, or we wouldn't be doing this, because the last times we did it, the city hasn't stepped up saying that we would put money into the budget to move these things forward, because we haven't heard in the past of how important it is to clean up our lakes and our tributaries until we get this done.
Okay. So then do we want to have any discussion on, for instance, like a time frame of when a septic system is over 15 years old? There is industry information out there towards the life expectancy of a septic system. And again, just because it leaves our household doesn't mean that the system is leaving. It just means that the water is going away and is going somewhere.
Let me ask you this question, because we know that's not a bad idea, but I think somewhere in this we need to rely, and I don't know if it's possible, on the industry that does septic tank pumping. When there's a failure, how does the city know that there's a failure? Do we ask the septic system companies that are making their money off of pumping septics if they know there's an inspection of a tank? I think when there's septic systems out there and they sell, they have to have a septic tank inspection. Well, at some point in time, we should be able to get that information to be able, as Sandy would say, be the heavy hand. That's the time when you be the heavy hand. If a septic company or an inspector says this system is not working, rather than not even have that information. Uh-oh, I got hands. Let's go to Sandy.
I would love to be the heavy hand on that one, and I will gather the pertinent data for you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Volunteer.
A volunteer is always good.
A warm
Okay, Millie.
volunteer.
Okay,
Let's go to Millie.
our subdivision is not quite 60 years old yet. And so the amount of replacement septic systems have been, for most houses, maybe 3 times. Help me out, Jane. Because the amount of costs for homeowners is ongoing for making sure their septic systems work.
We have been in sorry.
Go ahead, Jane.
Well, in Suburban Acres is what I'm referring to. And we've been here 54 years with the same septic system, having pumped it, as far as I remember, twice. So, you know, we are out of leach lines is our problem. We've had to redig leach lines 3 times, and we are out of space now for leach lines.
It should be about the system as a whole. And I do want to say, because I know where all of you live out there, we lived in North Prescott, and we just happened to have to be forced by the city, when Taylor Hicks School was built and they put the main line behind Roma, that we had to hook up because the sewer system became available. Now, the financials that my parents had to pay at the time, I couldn't tell you what that was, although I do remember the city filling the septic tank with sand and disconnecting it in that way. But I guess the point I'd like to say to you, Jane, is I had a septic system over off of Green Lane, and unfortunately, the system worked great because I disconnected my gray water. Although when the gray water was hooked to it, it didn't work great, and it ended up in the creek, running down the creek. So a lot of these systems that are in fractured rock, like in North Prescott, a lot of times those leach lines may seem to be functioning well, but they're functioning right into Willow Creek. So that's another
That is my point. That is, I agree with you, that our septic system is ancient. We're out of leach lines, and who knows where the water is maybe going if we're on our last leach line leg. So
thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't disagreeing.
I appreciate that. I don't know that we can go to Michael or not. He's not on the meeting. Michael, if you're listening, you haven't been sworn in yet as a member of this group, so your comments will have to wait until after that takes place. And I'm not a lawyer, but I know that's what he's going to say.
Okay, so then the next question on our list is dealing with an existing home on a septic system, and it would be on city water. And should it be required to connect to a new sewer main? So if the city chose to expand sewer within the neighborhood, put it in front of the houses, then we're bringing that question to, should that house have to be connected to that new sewer? I guess one thought I've got is, with all of the excellent communication and discussion we've had towards that existing house, maybe we utilize the same three scenarios that we've highlighted in yellow there towards that existing house also at this point in our discussions. If anybody disagrees with that concept, let us know. Looks like not.
Okay.
Okay. So then from that, we'll go on to, we mentioned at the beginning, goal 3 is to review and identify funding management. So the source on who pays for what. Mechanisms to be able to make that happen. Then, like we've mentioned before, grants, loans, financing. We don't have the city on there. Somehow we lost that. We also had in there before as far as city participation. And then there's methods also as far as creating districts and or assessments. So all of these are going to be part of the funding discussion. And not to jump completely out of order, but we'll jump completely out of order. So one of the things that Carrie had then was to discuss an alternative time proposed for the September meeting, and that is to allow Mark Woodfill, our finance director, to participate in and or lead a fair amount of the discussion towards the financing side of it. Also, Sandy already volunteered on one thing. We are looking for more volunteers to put some time into research out there in the World Wide Web to find opportunities like grants. And some of those options or opportunities, that a few that we're aware of, is like this EPA Clean Water State Revolving Fund. ADQ's got the Water Quality Improvement Grant. CDBG is potentially an option in financially neighborhoods that meet the financial requirements of CDBG. And then WIFA comes into play in regards to Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. That is what the city utilizes many times for low-interest loans for water and sewer expansions. So the city, we are well-versed and have all the information in regards to WIFA. But then we're looking for volunteers to search for other opportunities and or look into, like the EPA and ADQ, a little bit more to gather the requirements, the information on those programs, to consider those as a viable opportunity in order to help us with financing to make the whole process accomplishable.
So if the people out there, that folks that are on the committee are listening, you don't have to necessarily commit today, but if you think about it in the next day or so or week, get a hold of Carrie and let them know that you are researching it so she can keep her finger on the pulse of how many people are trying to do that. Sandy, go ahead.
I volunteered Jim Hazelbaker because he was late to the meeting.
That's good. I like that. Okay, so, hey, go ahead, Hazel Baker.
I was late to the meeting because I did not have the portal to get into the meeting.
Okay, we're not here for excuses. Now you got
No, that's not an excuse. All you have to do is look at Carrie and ask her.
it. She's smiling.
I know
Okay,
she is.
Let's go to, I think that's good. I mean, I think what we're showing here is that we have to be able to have Mark Woodfield come in and address what the city side's gonna be looking like, but we don't ever know until we can address the different zones that we're looking at to see what those cost figures are. So I just wonder, as one sitting here thinking about all the areas that are outside of being on sewer, whether they're Hope Kagan or whether they're the one you brought up out there at the Mountain Club, or whether it's North Prescott or the golf course, at some point in time, when are we going to look at numbers?
That's
Way down?
That's way at the end. Then we'll be looking at that's the prioritization.
Okay.
So that, because we're going to bring into play things from the sewer model as far as the system capabilities around that area. And I think Ms. Millie maybe mentioned, something about that. But we'll be bringing into play, there are different areas of the community where there potentially will be upgrades to the sewer system, the city sewer system, to be able to expand the service in there. So that will all be part of then creating a priority list of areas, the unsewered areas.
And I'm bringing that up, Craig, because the people that are out here, it's not all about just surveys. It's about actually starting to look at numbers, look at engineering, what it's going to cost for engineering, which ones we go to first, and those types of things. Because I know that's what I'm interested in. What does that really mean in the big picture of taking septic tanks out, and how much will we benefit from that? So you're right. It's not now. These are always tough parts to go through, is when you set up a new policy, is to look at the financing, as that's always where it gets bogged down, is who wants to pay for it out of their pocket, because there's nothing really cool about sewer. But there is really something cool about quality of life, which is the outcome of capturing the sewer. Let's go to Millie real quick. Go ahead, Millie. Unmute.
All right. On the CARES Act, I believe it was mentioned at a city council meeting, possibly getting some money from that revenue, but they went ahead and put it towards merit raises for the city employees and other things. But why didn't Councilman Blair speak up for our committee?
Those funds can only be used for certain things, and as far as I know, based upon the information that I've received, those dollars haven't been committed yet. But one thing the CARES money does do, just so you know, as a sidebar, it gave us the flexibility to utilize those funds in the general fund. That gives us an opportunity to have more money in the general fund to spend it on exactly what we're talking about in each one of these subdivisions. So it may not be, I guess, coined as CARES money, but it gives us an opportunity to have more money in the general fund to do these types of things. So that will come out of my mouth later on. Uh-oh, Palladini's on there. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I want to just reiterate, just so everybody's on the same page, the AZ CARES money that the city got went strictly to public safety. Public safety costs of over $5 million between March and June of this year. And that in turn freed up general fund money. And so I think we have to be careful too when we go down that path that the sewer fund is an enterprise fund. It's a separate fund. It's not sewer and water and utilities and streets are separate funds. They're not general fund money. I mean, that's not to say that money can't be moved from the general fund to these other enterprise funds and vice versa. But I think if going down that path, there's some risks involved and some complexities involved in terms of spending general fund money for these other, to take care of issues that these other enterprise funds are supposed to be self-sustaining. And also,
Well taken.
And just make one more clarification that the council's vote to essentially release raises for city employees was completely separate from this freed up money, the money that was freed up, the general fund money that was freed up by the AT CARES grant or money we received. That was a vote as a result of the economics or the economy of the city and the tax revenues being well over what was anticipated or projected by the finance director. So just making sure that everybody kind of is informed of these decisions and why
we got Mr. Woodfill on there with his hand up. Matter of fact, he's got two hands up. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I just to reiterate a little bit of what Mr. Palladini was saying, just wanted to clarify, in no way, no how was any CARES money used for the employee merit that the council released. That was part of the operating budgets that were adopted by council. It was just put on hold. CARES money was not any way part of that.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. One thing I think that's interesting, based upon everybody seeing the map, I'm glad you put it up there. Thank you very much. You can actually look at the number of accounts out there that are on septic systems. I believe that number is over 4,000. So if you can figure out 4,000 and how much each individual.
Okay, I don't think
Let me make sure the number's right here.
Let's go out by individual areas in that. Yeah, so what this map is representing is water accounts that are not on sewer.
Okay.
And different areas. So like here, the 181 accounts, that's Government Canyon.
Okay.
The 428, that's going to be Mountain Club area. The 134, that gets up in, let me see, tributaries. I believe that's going to be upper Copper Basin out into like Rancho Vista Hills.
Mullen Way, yeah.
Up in that area. This 191 in this area, that's going to be Bernie Fisher.
Forbing Park.
Forbing Park area. Then we get up into the 400, we got 225 is going to be in the vicinity of Williamson Valley Road, Iron Springs. Get out to 306, that's going to be Pokagon area off Williamson Valley Road. Then we get into the North Prescott area is going to be the 409 accounts. Let's see, how do I get it to move? I guess it's at the top. Okay.
The whole picture.
And then we have 42 accounts out here.
Of course.
Then golf course, we got 110, and Longview 156. So those are current. So that's 2,572. What's on that map? Those are current water customers that are on septic. Some of those, and we will. We're doing the research counting on that. We will know how many of those are within a certain distance of existing sewer at another meeting as well.
If we put together a calculation of, I know it would be a number, and sometimes numbers are good, the amount that we recharge through a regular sanitary sewer system on an average usage on a home, how many gallons would that be times 2572?
Well, that's quite a calculation there.
And the reason why I'm bringing that up, because I want people out there to really put their arms around the fact that that is how much sewage we can recharge, and that's how much sewage is possibly leaking now into our creeks, streams, and our reservoirs.
What we absolutely know today is that on an average of the total water that we supply to our water customers, that on an average, we are returning and recharging over 60%. From the brand new communities with very low, zero type of scaping and such, very low water use landscaping, then we're upwards of over 90% return when we get into those brand new subdivisions. So we have those numbers now, and that 60% return on average, that is covering these 2,572 connections that are getting water that never comes back. So every single one of those that we connect, that will help increase.
So that'd be 60% of what number? Is that 60% of like 4,000 gallons
Of their water use.
of their water use?
That's our total water delivered.
Okay,
We get on average over 60% returned.
okay. So this number would be huge.
So every one of these that we connect on the sewer, then that increases that return rate because we're getting that water back.
Okay. This is a daunting task, but I think it's well worth taking.
So our last agenda item today is proposal of a new time for the September 15th meeting. And
I think because Mark Woodfill is the one that is probably going to be talking a lot about financial stuff.
he's the one that directed 1:30 for the 15th meeting.
Okay, so does everybody out there, would they be okay with 1:30 to 3 on that date? September 15th, which is a Tuesday. Anybody have a problem with it? So Carrie will remind you and let everybody know. And again, even though we have an agenda that's made up that we need to kind of try to follow because it's important to do so, if there's something that's working on your mind that you would like to talk about, it would be good to let Carrie know up front prior to the meeting, and we can then talk about it as staff, and then hopefully maybe put it on the agenda, because, you know, we're all individuals and we're all looking at things in a different mindset. So we want to make sure that we're covering everybody out there that's on this committee with their concerns and their attitudes. So if you have issues, make sure you let Carrie know what those are, or Sandy, if you are doing your homework and you want to report back to Carrie, that would be great. Okay, is that all we have for now? Anybody else have anything? I see all the hands are red, so that means everybody's taking their naps. I want to thank each and every one of you for participating. It's important that we involve the community in this, and hopefully together with the city's participation and Mark Woodfield's checkbook, we'll get somewhere this time. So thank everybody. Have a great day and have a nice weekend. We'll see you on the 15th at 1:30.
Thank you all.
Thank you.